The new recruit stepped onto the vast training ground, her boots crunching softly on the gravel beneath her feet. She carried no weapons, no armor, just the weight of her own determination in her chest. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the compound where the seasoned Marines were already moving with purpose. Their faces were hard-carved by years of discipline and battle. The recruit could feel their eyes on her, the whispers rippling through the ranks like a cold wind. There was a murmur that traveled faster than the morning breeze. The label was clear: she was weak. The smallest in stature, the least experienced, and not nearly tough enough to survive this brutal world. Her heart tightened at the words, but she refused to show it. She had seen the doubts before in her village, when they said a girl could never be a warrior, when they laughed at her dreams, when they told her to stay quiet and accept her place. She was used to it, but here, in the heart of the military fortress, those whispers cut deeper. They seemed louder than ever. The other recruits eyed her sideways, some with pity, others with barely concealed amusement. Even the instructors seemed to doubt her. The commanding officer watched her from a distance. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, his silence felt like a verdict sealed. Before she could even prove herself, the recruit lowered her gaze and took a deep breath. The air smelled of sweat metal and the faint scent of gun oil. She reminded herself why she had come here, why she had left everything behind to prove them wrong, to show that strength was not measured by size or appearances, but by will and heart. She clenched her fists and stepped forward toward the first line of soldiers who would put her through hell. The training was legendary, unforgiving, and designed to break the weak. She heard the roar of voices barking orders, the sharp cracks of rifles, the pounding of feet on hard ground. It was chaos-controlled and merciless. The recruit felt the cold sting of the wind against her face as she ran drills, pushing herself to keep up with others who seemed naturally stronger and faster. She stumbled once, twice, but refused to fall. Her breath came heavy, her muscles screamed, but she fought the urge to give. In her mind replayed every lesson she had learned since childhood, every moment that had shaped her. The days spent lifting stones heavier than her own body, the nights she had trained alone beneath the stars. The pain was familiar now, something she had invited into her life. She refused to be defined by the label weak. She would carry that word like a badge and then burn it to ashes with her actions. Her eyes locked on the horizon as the drill sergeant barked out commands. The recruit could feel every muscle in her body straining to keep pace. The other recruits were like shadows flickering ahead her. But she was not just chasing them, she was studying them, learning every trick, every pattern. She knew that strength came not just from brute force, but from understanding and patience. The sun climbed higher and the heat pressed down, but she pushed through the exhaustion. Her thoughts turned inward, focusing on the fire inside that no fatigue could extinguish. Around her, the base was alive with sounds of battle simulation and toughened warriors honing their skills. Yet she moved through it all like a quiet storm, gathering power unseen. But soon the whispers would stop, and soon they would all learn that beneath the surface of this seemingly fragile girl, there was a force waiting to explode, a force that would shake the ground and change everything forever. Under every muscle burned with the sharp ache of overuse, but her spirit refused to break. She woke before dawn each day, her body stiff and sore, yet she forced herself out of bed, the cold morning air biting at her skin, reminding her of the price she was willing to pay. The instructors pushed the recruits harder than any had expected. The drills were merciless, endless repetitions of running, jumping, crawling, and fighting that blurred together into a ceaseless grind. The other recruits seemed to adapt quickly, their bodies moving with practiced ease while she struggled to keep up. Her legs trembled, her lungs burned, and her hands blistered, yet she kept moving. The whispers had not stopped, but now they had a new edge of disbelief. How could someone so weak still stand so long? They said she was stubborn, foolish, maybe even crazy, but she did not care. She observed everything around her like a hawk, taking in every gesture, every pattern, the way the instructors timed their commands, the way the strongest recruits moved in sync like a single machine. The recruit learned to anticipate the drills, to prepare before the order was even given. Her mind sharpened into a blade, ready to strike when the moment came. The nights were the hardest. Alone in her barracks, she could hear the distant laughter and camaraderie of the others, but she remained focused, practicing silently in the shadows. Her hands memorized every move, the feel of punches and blocks. She imagined battles fought and won. In silence, she studied combat manuals, worn and creased from years of use, absorbing every detailed the pain of her body was constant, but it was a dull background noise to the fierce determination burning inside her. She was no longer the girl labeled weak. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with. The other recruits started to notice. Small changes: she moved faster, her reactions sharper, her footwork improved, and her strikes gained power. Even some of the instructors began to watch her with new interest. Their smirks faded, replaced by cautious respect. The recruit kept her focus on the next challenge, not looking back at the doubts or the whispers. She knew this was only the beginning. The moment that would prove everything was still far away. But with each passing day, the fire inside her grew stronger, feeding on every hardship and every failure, until one day during a sparring session, she found herself face to face with one of the toughest Marines. A man known for his ruthless skill and unbeatable confidence. He towered over her, his presence commanding the attention of the entire training yard. The other recruits gathered around, watching the inevitable showdown. The Marine sneered, sizing her up clearly, expecting an easy victory, but the recruit did not flinch, her eyes locked onto his every movement, calculating. Waiting for the perfect moment. She had trained for this moment, every second, every breath, her body coiled like a spring, ready to unleash its power. The battle was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. The air was thick with tension as the recruit and the towering Marine faced each other. The gathered crowd held their breath, waiting for the inevitable defeat that seemed written in stone. The Marine cracked his knuckles, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. He was confident, sure that this would be an easy victory, but the recruit stood still, calm, focused, her eyes locked on his every move. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, replaying scenarios in her mind, learning to read her opponents like a book. The first strike came fast. The Marine lunged forward with a powerful punch aimed to overwhelm her. In one blow she dodged narrowly, feeling the rush of air as his fist passed close. Her heart pounded, but she stayed steady. Her feet moved quickly, finding balance and leverage. She countered with a swift jab, catching the Marine off guard. The sound of impact echoed sharp and clear. The Marine stumbled, surprised by her speed and precision. The crowd murmured in disbelief. She was not just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every doubt. Every whisper that had ever tried to break her. She weaved through his attacks, each movement calculated and fluid. The Marine grew frustrated, throwing punches harder and faster, trying to overpower her, but she used his strength against him, turning each strike into an opening. Each moment, the fight grew more intense. The sun climbed higher, beating down on the training yard, their breaths coming hard and fast, their bodies moved with fierce determination, neither willing to give an inch. The recruit found a rhythm, a flow, that surprised even herself. She felt the power building inside her muscles, a storm ready to break free. With a sudden burst, she struck a powerful hook that landed squarely on the Marine's jaw. He faltered, staggering back, the shock clear in his eyes. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps. The Marine wiped blood from his lip, glaring at her with a new respect, but also a burning desire to win. He charged again, this time with reckless fury, but she was ready, ducking under his swing and delivering a decisive blow to his ribs. The Marine collapsed to the ground, stunned, unable to continue. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with disbelief and awe. The recruit stood tall, chest heaving, sweat dripping down her face, but a victorious smile breaking through her strength was no longer a secret. The label weak was shattered in that moment, replaced by a fierce new reality. She had proven not just to others, but to herself, that strength came from within, that willpower and heart could overcome any obstacle. The instructors looked at her with something new in their eyes: respect, admiration, maybe even a hint of fear. The other recruits gathered around the fallen Marine, whispering in amazement, and a few even nodded in quiet approval. The recruit felt a surge of pride and determination swelling inside her. This was only the beginning. The battles ahead would be harder, but so was she, and as she looked out at the training yard, she knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after the surprising victory dawned cold and gray, but the recruit felt a fire burning inside her, stronger than ever. The news of her knockout spread like wildfire across the base. Whispers turned into conversations, and conversations into rumors. Soldiers who had doubted her now looked at her with a mix of surprise and cautious respect. The once mocking glances shifted into curious stares. The instructors gathered in hushed tones, debating what they had just witnessed. The commanding officer, his face stern and unreadable, paced the training yard, his mind turning over the implications. This was no ordinary recruit. She was a force rewriting the rules of what was possible, and no one wanted to underestimate her. Again, but the recruit remained humble, focused, her mind clear, despite the swelling attention. She knew this was just the first battle in a much larger war. The other Marines were watching, waiting to see if her victory was a fluke or the birth of a true warrior. The training routines became even tougher, the challenges more brutal, as if the whole base wanted to break her spirit and test the limits of her newfound strength. Every morning she rose before dawn, pushing her body harder than before, sweating through endless drills, running through obstacle courses that left her breathless and aching, but she welcomed the pain. The recruit understood that strength was forged in the crucible of suffering, and she embraced every moment like a warrior preparing for battle. The other recruits now challenged her openly, some with skepticism, others with envy. They wanted to see if the girl who had knocked down a Marine could keep up the fight, or if she would finally crumble. The recruit met every challenge head-on, refusing to back down. Each fight was a battle of wills as much as of fists. Her technique improved, her reflexes sharpened, and her endurance grew with every grueling session. The bond between her and the others began to shift. Some who had ignored her now offered tentative nods of respect, while a few hardened rivals watched with narrowed eyes, plotting their own tests of strength. The recruit knew that proving herself physically was only part of the journey. The mental battle was even harder. The fear of failure, the weight of expectations pressed on her, but she carried it with quiet dignity, drawing strength from the memories of her past, from the voice inside that told her she was more than the label weak. The base became a battlefield, not just of physical power, but of spirit, determination, and resilience. The recruit learned to anticipate ambushes in training fights and outmaneuver traps set to break her down. She was not just surviving, she was mastering the art of war slowly, carving her place among the legends. The tension built toward the moment when another challenge would come, a true test of her strength and courage. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the training yard, the toughest Marines gathered. They had heard the stories, and they had decided to challenge her directly. The recruit felt the weight of their gazes, but met them without fear. Their leader stepped forward, a veteran known for his ruthless skill and unshakable confidence. He stared down the recruit, his voice cold and commanding, calling her out to prove if she was really worthy. The crowd tightened around them, waiting for the fight that could change everything. The recruit steadied her breathing, her heart steady. Like a drumbeat, she knew this fight would be harder than any before, but she was ready. Her eyes burned with the fire of a warrior, unbroken, unyielding, and unstoppable. The battle was about to begin, and the world would watch as the girl labeled weak faced her greatest test yet. The training yard was electric with anticipation. As the recruit faced the veteran Marine, the crowd circled them tight, their eyes burning with expectation. The veteran was a mountain of a man, his muscles rippling under his uniform and his reputation. As ruthless a legend among the ranks, he smiled a cruel, cold smile, certain this fight would end quickly and easily. But the recruit met his gaze without flinching. Her stance was steady, her breath controlled, and her mind sharp as a blade. The first move came like thunder. The veteran lunged forward, swinging a powerful punch aimed to crush her defenses. She ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as his fist missed narrowly. Her body moved instinctively, her training guiding every step. Her fists struck quickly, landing a blow to his ribs. The veteran grunted, surprised by her speed, but snarled and charged again, relentless and unforgiving. This was no ordinary fight. It was a battle of wills, a contest of spirit against raw power. Blow after blow, they exchanged punches, each one echoing like the beat of war drums. The veteran tried to overpower her with brute force, but she danced around him, using his momentum against him, turning his strength into weakness. Every strike she delivered was calculated, precise, and filled with the years of silent training she had endured. The crowd watched in awe as the recruit held her ground, refusing to yield. The veteran's face twisted in frustration as his attacks grew more desperate, but her resolve only hardened. She seized a moment when he overextended and landed a fierce uppercut that snapped his head back. The veteran staggered, blinking in shock. The recruit pressed the advantage with a flurry of strikes, each one landing clean and hard. The veteran fell to his knees, gasping for breath, unable to continue. The yard erupted in stunned silence, followed by a roar of approval and cheers. The recruit stood tall, chest heaving, sweat streaming down her face, but her eyes shone with Fierce triumph, she had done the impossible, again breaking through the doubts and surpassing every expectation. The instructors nodded in grudging respect, and the other Marines whispered her name with newfound reverence, but, for the recruit, this victory was more than a fight. It was proof that strength was not given. It was earned through pain, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. And as she looked out at the crowd, she knew that the battles ahead would demand even more from her, but she was ready. Ready to face whatever came next with the heart of a true warrior. The recruit's victory over the veteran Marine sent ripples across the training base. The whispers of doubt were fading, replaced by murmurs of curiosity and respect. But with the growing attention came a new wave of challenges. The other Marines were not content to watch quietly. Some approached with wary eyes, while others openly threw down the gauntlet, testing her limits, pushing her harder than ever. The recruit welcomed the trials. Each fight was a new battle, a chance to prove that her strength was no accident. She trained harder than before, rising earlier, pushing her body to the brink of exhaustion. But more than physical endurance, it was her mind that grew sharper. Her instincts, honed by countless hours of observation and practice, now guided her moves like a deadly dance. The training ground became a stage where every encounter was a test of wit, reflex, and will. The Marines who challenged her brought different styles and skills, some aggressive, some tactical, and others unpredictable. The recruit adapted swiftly, learning to read the subtle tells of their attacks and weaknesses. Each victory was harder won than the last, but her confidence soared with every success. Yet the battles left scars, not just on her body, but on her spirit. The fatigue was relentless, and the pressure to keep proving herself weighed heavy. The whispers had changed tone. They were no longer dismissive, but filled with anticipation, waiting for her to falter. The recruit pushed through the pain, finding strength in the memories of why she had come here, the promise she had made to herself to never be weak again. One evening, after a grueling day, she sat alone beneath the dim light of the barracks, her hands shaking from exhaustion, but her eyes burning. With resolve, she reviewed every fight, every move, searching for ways to improve. The training was no longer just about survival, it was about mastery. The Marines who challenged her became tougher, fiercer, but so did she. Her body moved with fluid precision. Her strikes packed more power, and her mind stayed calm under pressure. The recruit was becoming a legend, a warrior forged by fire and unyielding spirit. The day came when 5 Marines stood before her, the best fighters in the base. Their faces masks of determination and challenge. They had come together to test her strength one last time. The crowd gathered once more, the air thick with anticipation. The recruit faced them without fear, her heart steady, her eyes sharp, and filled with the fire of victory. The battle would be brutal, but she was ready to prove that the girl, once labeled weak, was now a force that no one could ignore. The training yard was charged with an energy that crackled through the air as the recruit faced the 5 Marines lined up before her. Their eyes were sharp weapons filled with challenge and the weight of their reputations. Each Marine was a seasoned fighter known for skill and strength. Together, they formed a wall of power meant to crush anyone daring enough to stand against them. The crowd gathered tight, buzzing with anticipation, ready to witness a battle that could become legend. The recruit stood her ground, her breath steady, her mind focused like a hawk hunting its prey. The first Marine stepped forward, muscles coiled like a spring, his gaze locked on hers without hesitation. He attacked a flurry of punches and kicks designed to overwhelm, but the recruit moved with grace, dodging, weaving, and countering with strikes that hit true, each blow chipping away at her opponent's confidence. The fight was a blur of motion, strength, and skill as the first Marine fell to the ground, gasping, stunned. By her speed and precision, the crowd erupted, but there was no time to celebrate. The next Marine charged with fierce determination, bringing a different style of fighting, forcing the recruit to adapt quickly. She met the challenge head-on, using every lesson learned, every ounce of strength and cunning. Her body flowed with the rhythm of battle, each movement sharper, faster, and more powerful. Then the second Marine collapsed. The third stepped up, fiercer than before, his attacks ruthless and calculated, but the recruit was relentless, matching him blow for blow, her endurance and focus unwavering. The fight stretched on sweat, mixing with dust, their breaths ragged and hearts pounding. The crowd watched in silence, caught between awe and disbelief. One by one, the Marines fell, each knockout, a testament to her growing power and unbreakable spirit. The 5th Marine, the last of the challenge, stood, breathing heavily, his eyes blazing with a mixture of respect and anger. It was brutal, each strike harder, each movement more desperate. The recruit dug deep, finding reserves of strength no one thought she had. With a decisive move, she landed a knockout blow that sent the last Marine crashing to the ground. The training yard exploded in cheers and applause. The girl, once labeled weak, had done the impossible, knocking out 5 Marines in a single day. Her chest heaved, sweat glistening on her skin, but her eyes shone with fierce triumph. This was more than victory. It was a declaration of strength, a rewriting of her story, and the stories of all who doubted her. She had become a warrior, not just in body but in spirit, a force that could not be ignored. The respect of the entire base was hers, earned. Pain, perseverance, and heart. The recruit knew this was only the beginning, but for now, she stood victorious, a legend in the making. The echoes of the battles fought still reverberated through the training base, but the recruit now stood. Transformed, no longer the girl branded weak, but a warrior forged by fire and sweat and relentless determination. The cheers of the crowd faded into the background as she looked out over the training ground, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. The path she had walked was carved from pain, sacrifice, and countless hours of pushing. Beyond every limit, her victories had not come from sheer luck, but from a will stronger than steel and a heart that refused to yield. The instructors gathered around her, their faces a mixture of respect, admiration, and a new kind of understanding. They saw in her the spirit of a true warrior, someone who had broken every expectation and rewritten the rules of what it meant to be strong. The other recruits now looked to her not with doubt or dismissal, but with hope and inspiration. Some approached quietly, asking for advice. Others simply nodded in silent acknowledgement. She had become a beacon in a harsh world, a symbol that strength was not given but earned through perseverance and courage. The commanding officer, who had once watched her with skepticism, now stood silently beside her, a rare smile touching his lips. The label weak was gone, replaced by a name whispered in awe across the base. The recruit knew that her journey was far from over. Many battles still awaited, and the road ahead was uncertain, but the fire inside her burned brighter than ever. She had proven that strength was more than muscle, more than skill. It was the unbreakable spirit that refused to be defeated. The base itself seemed to shift around her, the very air charged with the promise of change. The recruit understood that her story would inspire others to rise to challenges thought impossible, to break free from the chains of doubt and fear, and to fight for their own place in the world. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the training yard, she stood tall and proud, ready to face whatever came next with courage, honor, and unyielding strength. The girl once labeled weak had become a legend, a warrior who had not only found her own power, but had awakened the power in others. Her name would be remembered not just for the fights she won, but for the spirit she embodied, the spirit of a true warrior.